All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Just give it a couple of minutes for people to start filtering in. While we wait, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and we'll get started in just a minute. Just going to give a couple more minutes. Looks like people are trickling in now. All right. I can go ahead. Let's go ahead and kick started. I know we've got a lot to cover today, lots of interesting topics and use cases. So again, welcome and thank you for joining today's session on orchestrating the multiplayer agentic product operating model. It's a very timely topic. We know as agents are showing up in all different parts of our business and the token and inference costs are ballooning. So we're going to be covering a lot of different use cases and best practices. And of course, as we go along, if you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll try to get through as many as possible. So our host today is Becky Flint. She's the founder and CEO of Dragonboat, the product portfolio OS for agentic enterprises. Prior to founding Dragonboat, Becky built and scaled product portfolio management from the ground up for 4 companies, including PayPal, BigCommerce, Feedzai, and Shutterfly. And yeah, with that, I'll kick it over to you, Becky.
Hey, thanks, Leah, and welcome everyone. Did you get a chance to show the poll? Leah, you're on mute.
I got the poll right here. Can everybody see the poll?
I can't seem to be able to see poll. Make sure everyone can see.
Let me try one more time. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. Should be working now. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Wasn't supposed to launch exactly when you joined. Yeah,
Perfect
so
timing.
we might need you to re-answer again. I did see some results on the first one, but I just relaunched it. All right, we've got 50%. That's under 5. Going up, couple groups of people with 20 plus. 5 to 10 seems to be under 5 and 5 to 10. All right. Give everybody a couple more minutes to answer, a couple more seconds to answer, and then we'll kick off. All right. Okay. Couple people between the 5 and 10 mark. All right, looks like most people have answered. So if you want to get started, Becky, I can turn it off.
Would you like to share the poll result? All right. That's a pretty good. It's a very similar to the customer base and the teams that we're talking to, where there are a third of the team are around between 5 to 10, and then we have a distribution on the smaller ones. Some of them on the 20 is a large number. So pretty surprising to see more than 20 agents. So that'll be cool to see how these agents do, and then what are the teams they are part of. And thank you, Leah, for kicking off the session. I'm excited to discuss more around the multiplayer agentic model. So you can see there's a little word play here, not just multi-agent. We talk about multiplayer because that's actually the case between human and agent. So as we see today that lots of companies already have agents, and then most of them have multiple agents. And there are actually 3 stages of multi-agents. One of them is personal or free agents. Most of us have one or using some sort of LLM tools to drive efficiency, productivity. So those are the personal or free agents. There are also AI teammates. We're seeing more and more of those, and hopefully you already have some of them at your organization. And then the third one is called agentic orchestration, which include not just AI teammates and the personal agents in your area. They work together also with their human counterpart. Agents are our partners. So think about them, they work together just similar to human work together as well. Now, let's take a quick look at a human AI agents or personal agents or free agent. These are the early stages of the agents we started to drive productivity, drive work. Even if you may not see it at your work, the chances are that bring your own AI, bring your agent is a widely popular in organizations, and that make you more productive. It also comes with its downside and challenges as well. As you start, you have lots of agents. They potentially go out of boundary of what you typically do as your personal role, and that could cause if you have too many agents. Obviously, you could have run out of time to monitor output and make sure they are building the right thing. That's a high risk of that. The other part of the personal agent, when you have too many, is if you are going outside the realm of your expertise. And then who's going to coach them and make sure they deliver the result that's trustworthy? And we've definitely seen some of that. And the other downside of that, lots of free agents are high inference costs. So let's show an example here. This happens often, right? We use agent to do the busy work for us. So we want to have a quick understanding of where we are in terms of roadmaps so that we can create a presentation deck to our various stakeholders. And this is one example. Change any of those. It could be Claude, could be anything. And this is one example actually happened to one of the companies, the teams we work with previously, is they would go use Copilot to scan through all the notes, the emails and discussions and Jira tickets to infer what is happening and provide a roadmap status update. As you can imagine, this is a very expensive exercise. Every time you run of that, it will take quite a while and quite a bit of cost. And it's not quite accurate and reliable as well. And imagine you have hundreds of people or thousands of people to do that. And that will be even more, both in terms of cost and in terms of reliability of something quite critical in communicating the right information. And that's because there wasn't a operating foundation for agents and the human to work on. And similarly, without put the agent on the side, same thing for human. If you don't have a foundation for you to understand where things are, you do have to go spend a lot of time to put information together. And when you have a operating foundation, then these inference costs could be once or could be very minimum by using your LLM directly to a reliable source. And that you can still have a free agent. This free agent will work very differently because your personal agent will actually go to the place that's trusted and is up to date, and then you infer very little and being able to produce a agentic a roadmap update deck through this very efficient and a powerful operating foundation. So that's one example of personal agent. They could work in both ways, depending on what the foundation they have. So let's take a look of this. This example we are going to use is Claude. Sorry, it's not Claude. It's a Claude here on the co-work. You can see, for example, we have the MCP server available to you so that you can get a quick result on your roadmap. Not only you can find what is happening on your product roadmap, where they are in terms of timeline, the progress is actually calculated and aggregated from the sources already, so you don't have to infer, right? The ones we had earlier that, when you have in personal agent does all the figuring out the progress, that's very costly. When you have a platform actually bring in those progress into one place so that give you the details. You can dive into each individual item, make sure they're accurate, knowing who owns what before you can get a deck. Obviously, you can, from here to create using the slide creation skills or other skills that you may need to be able to run this personal agent work at the efficiency and the trusted data. So that's one example of using still running your personal agent, but access differently with the tools and the foundations they can access to. That is trusted, it's a traceable. You can validate the data. And if you see data is not accurate, you make sure that the owner of these items can update, because once they update, the next person will get up-to-date information. So that's a good example to show you that the data is accurate and up-to-date. Now, let's talk about the second use case where you have AI teammates. And this is the evolution of the companies adopting AI agent in their workflow. So we've seen a lot more happening this year than previous years, where the AI teammates actually are skilled to do certain things. They have a domain knowledge. They would go through a well-defined workflow, just like personal agent or like any other AI tools. If you don't have a good foundation for them to operate, that will be challenging. Here, when you have AI teammates, there's a lot of need to define the workflow, the resources, and all the other foundational information to them so they can be operational. The downside of the limitation of AI teammates is often they are blocked by cross-functional dependencies. So let's take a quick look at this example. So we have create, let's say, a marketing team or user research team has this market research agent. They would go out, probably go to places, gather information, listen to calls and whatnot, getting that information about the market and the user. So then the one way to reduce token cost, if you don't have this AI teammates way, then anyone could be doing that. When you have 10, 20, 50 people doing similar market research, not only you have high token costs, which become a big concern, as all of you know these days, right? It's no longer free for all. Then we want to put in a source of truth so people know that's reusable. So one agent does this work. So just similar to your human organization, you have functions, you have teams, they have special areas of responsibilities, and they can make that available to others, having this source of truth. Let's say we store the research results in the Google Drive, all the folder, right? Have reports and whatnot. We can communicate and share out to others. We can even have discussions on, what is important and what we do about it, and taking additional context. But then the struggle here is to take action on market research require other teams, not just the marketing or user research team. So that is great to have the information to speed up the part of the process. The challenge is then, what do we do from there? You need another team to be part of the conversation. Okay, so I see some questions. Maybe we can go to these questions later. The action is where things get stalled. So that's where we move to the next level. The next level, before we jump into it, let's talk a little bit about the unique part of the product organization. So first of all, most of you kind of already sense it. Like, why is the product organization so hectic? Why product teams always in meetings? Why we have so many stakeholders? The reality is the product is pretty much the only function in the organization that's the most cross-functional. That not cross-functional in a way that you get input, you also influence and impact others. So in this example, obviously in organization, you have all these functions, you have all these teams that in this lens, we will look at is the revenue teams would have input to your product. They also rely on product teams to achieve their goals. Same thing for the customer teams and the resourcing, your obviously engineering team for sure, and all the other teams as well. When you have all these teams that need to interact with the product, And then product is also a relatively newer function compared to everything else. We have two challenges. Number one, product teams don't even have their own like native, most of the product teams don't have their native tools to work as an organization. There are certain product tools working for individual product managers, for example, but not necessarily for the product org holistically, right? So that's the first starting point. Then the product tool also need to support the agentic workflow. That's additional challenges here. So with that, we can look at the example here. Now, before we go there, just go back up. So as that's why we put a Dragonboat here is in two ways. One is it's a function, it's a tool, it's a platform for the product teams themselves. Because the product team also has to do work, regardless of writing PRDs or provide updates on the reason why and so forth. There are also product teams need to collaborate with others. And one example here is to talk about how product teams and customer teams can interact. Now, before I dive deeper into this, maybe we'll have a quick audience question. How many of the team here are in the environment where you interact with a customer or customer success team, and that their goals and flows interact with yours as well? Maybe it would be great to hear anyone want to share a bit of their interaction with the customer success team. I know we have any question, comment here? All right, so let's assume some of you at least are working especially in the B2B environment, are working with the customers that are in the realm. So come up as a connector. Okay. So we have a question about Dragonboat does not come out as a connector on Anthropic. You have to have a Dragonboat account, and then you would link that through MCP of your account, not listed yet on the app directory. We can follow up with you on Corey on the MCP connector for Anthropic. Cool. All right, so I put in here, the clause as an example. You can access from different places as well. In this example, we actually have multiple tools can integrate, not integrate directly, connect with Dragonboat, so that you can interact with your team through a multiplayer setup. So let's take a look at this example. So assume you have a customer success manager who hosts quarterly business review with the customers. And in this example, we are going to show you a couple of the workflows. So let me first go to, give me one sec. So we're going to go to Microsoft Teams. Similar to Slack, obviously we have a variety of audience here. Some use Teams, some use Slack, some use Copilot, some use Claude, all variety of the tools that we're using. So using this Microsoft Teams as an example can be very similar, happen in Slack as well. Here, a customer success manager is going to say, hey, I'm in the process of preparing for a customer QBR. And this customer success manager previously took a note from a previous quarterly business review, share with the group to say, here's what we heard from a customer, and there are some challenges. There are certain areas they really enjoy using, and we brought that into Dragonboat so that you have a source of data and truth for what customer says relevant to product. Now, fast forward going into the preparing for the next QBR, and the customer success manager wants to know, what do we have for this customer in terms of feature requests and where we are now. And upon asking the Dragonboat AI or Dragonboat app bot in the Microsoft Teams word, that it came across 2 companies. And that's very common because you could get in sources that people could have typos, they could have things that coming from, chat or could coming from Salesforce and whatnot. And those are often causing issues. And especially in the agentic world, right? So this is if we will call it, this is a semantic unification. How do we take the Acme and Acme core and realize it's one? So you can combine them. You can unify them into one. So this entity of the customer in Dragonboat actually represented as the Acme. And then it also could be Acme Corp, for example, in Salesforce. And they can be combined into one when it comes to inference and the searching. So now we found out that there are 4 feature requests for this customer. Now, obviously, before we go, we want to make sure it's accurate, and not only Dragonboat generate a view on what these generate the answers to them, it give you the source of the data. So you can click onto this view to see, all right, so here's a customer feedback. Indeed, I have all these customers. Here's where we are into this. I can even know where they come from and where linked to as well. Now, with this customer feedback, the intake, not everyone has been worked on, right? So we want to know what else we've been worked on in the recent time, what is on the roadmap. So then the customer success manager asked us, so we actually being worked on or released. So here are some of the data you have. And it doesn't look great because most of the things haven't made progress. And hopefully that's not the date before you have this customer review. And by the way, as additional agents you can create, it can be something like, hey, give me an update on a weekly basis, alert me anything that hasn't been worked on that's critical for me. And that's an additional agent you can create and build on top of the platform. So as you start to have this insight and the visibility, you can not only being able to negotiate what and help prioritize that. I can ask the agent who's like the proxy of the PM, right? So instead of I go ask the product managers that maybe across multiple product teams on what's going on, I can get that information quickly. And if I want to know, if I want to delay something so that I can offer by delay a feature so that you can move up a feature, I can go have that ask. I can ask to say, if I delay this feature, does it impact anyone else? So when the customer success manager says, if we delay this, what is the impact of downstream impact we have? So the Dragonboat AI can reason across your ontology, or we call it, your ontology, to understand where are the connections of these requests and this feature, what they are impacting. So you know the impacted goals and the impact apparent, so that if you would change anything, you also have to make sure that the parent organization, a parent owner of this epic would be able to align to what you need to change. So in this case, if I click on the relationship chart, I will be able to see all the interconnections of these feature that not only connected to my customer, at least that's good in the way that I only connect to the areas that I own, not impacting other customers, but you also see there are other areas that they impact. And that made the product manager, this is a way to really bubble up for us to see why product managers' job are so challenging. because it's not like, hey, this makes sense for this customer, we're gonna go ahead and work on it. It could be something that other people own, or you rely on another team, or if you change it, you're gonna impact a bigger strategic bet. So that kind of understanding and reasoning across your graph, your product portfolio operating graph, and understand the relationship, as well as if you change something, the downstream impact, that is the one part traditionally very difficult to see and even harder to make decisions. So this is where when you have a multi-agent, multiplayer environment, being able to see and trace and understand downstream impact and or move up something, that will be additional insight, right? You can see all the interconnections here. If we want to move up this feature, because it's really critical to our customers, what do we need to trade off? Now you see a lot of features here. I can further dive in to see what they are and how we negotiate that. So it's almost like a hopeless in some ways doing that manually. But when you have AI, the trade-offs, analysis, and scenarios can be done much faster by having visibility of the connection towards all these interconnected pieces. So that was a lot going on here. Do you have any comment and questions so far on what you've seen here on this multiplayer and connected workflow? All right, let's go back to our deck earlier. So we covered when you have a cross-functional teams and have to work across the functions, then you have to be able to have a way to support that. In this example we showed earlier, you as a CSM, customer success manager, preparing an upcoming quarterly business review, obviously they are going to get additional information from their toolings in terms of adoptions and other information from the other tools. But then they also need to get information from product organization. Here with the Dragonboat, it would allow you to provide accurate data on feature request, feature plan, so CSM can craft the right story with the customers. And if they want to make a change or something, at least they understand the ripple effect. Because if you don't, you go ask the product managers, the product teams to say, we want to do this, we want to change that. They have to go through the whole process. If you see that ahead of time, understand, oh, okay, I think this customer is more important. Or if I can talk to my teams, my leadership on what trade-offs we should make because there are bigger business impact, then these are the informed data for that type of trade-off and a negotiation happen across different teams when there are multiple areas are impacted. So this is what we have so far around 3 types of multi-agent interaction: personal agent, team AI teammates, and then the agentic orchestration where agents and a human from multiple teams and the functions work together. Now, we just showed one example. So there are many, many more of that. So we showed a little bit of research, market research, competitor or user. We talk about the customer requests coming into Dragonboat and how do you map to different capabilities and scenarios. And we're not going to go through all of them today, give the interest of time. And but that's a lot of them is around product planning and roadmap planning. There are also things around just generally product managers need to do their job writing PRDs or creating tickets. Sometimes you do, sometimes you directly just go to code, depending on how you operate today. Provide roadmap updates. Obviously, there's people ask. There's also push, proactively identification, meeting notes generated as well, or There are other use cases where you have a sales enablement, a product brief. And this is something I want to talk, double click for a few minutes as well. There are hard ways to do that, which is scanning through all the PRDs, scanning through all the documents to do that. Or there are easier ways to do that. Like we have these meetings, product managers have meetings all the time. They do roadmap reviews, feature reviews, and they do updates. And all these things are done many, many times over. Now, with the Dragonboat's the multi-agent tool, you can thread together meeting notes from regardless it's a Teams or Zooms, and those meeting notes can transcribe and turn into the sales talk track and support talk track, and obviously PRD review for engineering. All these talk tracks can be stored inside the platform and has the data that's linked and modeled of your business so that you can actually pull them out directly to say what is in Q2, then we pull out the specific sales talk track, for example, and then you can use that to do enablement versus earlier example where you have a scan through all the data, try to decipher all the information. That may not be accurate because as time goes on, as meetings and reviews, those get lost somewhere, right? So tying them to the product through meetings or discussions, and there are always updates. So when you try to pull them out, they will be available to you. Not only that, also available to in a way that is much efficient because you can pull out a set of the data and then you can pull out specific enablement. So we put, so customer QBR is another example we shared earlier. You can gather the information from here. The way to utilize the data inside of Dragonboat or inside of the platform designed for you are you can imagine endless every day in your work. So we put some of them also in the Dragonboat website as well. We have some of the details flow through that. Now, what is important? We talk through some of the use cases built on top of the data we have. I want to spend a minute to talk through how you think about your enterprise and your organization's multiplayer agentic operating model. So we all heard companies talk about it. Everyone's talk about it, right? So in the agentic model, we don't work like we used to do before. But also we still leverage what has been working. So think about your AI agent. All of the AI agent is your partner and it's a part of your team or extension of you. Think about that. So everybody works. So there's work tools that enable us to work. There are also AIs for tasks, for work management. And those work tools could be unstructured. They may not have just build it for individual for efficiency. And AI definitely can make it faster. AI can even thread them together. That's first part to think about this. That's sort of the personal agent and the free agent coming to play. That somewhat of they can be accessed from anywhere. So the second part, think about your multiplayer agentic operating model is sort of like system records and data. And these system records that are data are the ones that are processed the data already. They are specialists in their area. So today you may hear people saying words of, in the past called a center of excellence or functional teams. And today we have a center of intelligence. So that there's a customer intelligence that we saw earlier in the diagram. It could be in the, whatever the CRM tool you use could have the customer intelligence that connect the signals and data and the changes and the workflows for the customer related or revenue related area. And that these areas, you can also go get answers very quickly, understand what's going on. Sometimes they even put a layer on top of, you heard some of the layers and people talk about it, the semantic layer, the context layer, they sit on top of these data. They're all great. So the data leading to strategy and work. But how do you connect, how you turn work to outcome is actually a iterative process. It's an iterative process that not only is link strategy to work. We know, you hear people say that all the time, say, okay, we have visibility, we can link work, we can link task to strategy. And we know that's not the only way, and it's probably not the right way. Strategy should be steering the work, right? Not like linking work to a strategy. That's like a real view mirror of what has happened. So that a lot of times because we didn't really have the platform, we didn't have the tooling to support that. The reality is you would take the data, formulate your strategy and the goals, and then you have to go through a realm of evaluation. We saw it earlier. There's a downstream impact, there's a trade-off. So those are need to be balanced so that we would say which one we're going to trade off and which one we are actually going to take forward at the expense of something we're not going to do. And that will steer your execution. Now, obviously, execution also impacts strategy as well. Things may take longer, dependency came up. So this interaction between the work and orchestration is critical on as near time as possible so that we can not only understand problems fast, that we can also make adjustment fast. And as the work happened, inevitably, almost in near real time, they're going to impact this system. So that type of interaction and update also need to happen as well. So as many of us know that AI can be only as good as the data and the context underneath it. How do you manage that? So you need a platform not only allow you to work and make decision, make evaluation, also allows you to make sure your data is accurate. So I'll show you one example here in Dragonboat is that it has all these ambient agents. The behind the scenes ambient agents are running around to track your data, to make sure your data errors identified, either hasn't been updated or not linked to the correct strategy, or strategy drift in terms of how this is sort of the rear view mirror a little bit, right? So to say, hey, how things are not connected to your work, or if a goal, so if we click into that, you can see whether some of them are linked to inactive goals. And this happens quite often. Business change quickly. Some of the goals already, changed or shifted, priority changed. When you have a larger organization, there could be hundreds of teams and tickets are being linked to it. And this allows you to detect just for me, like one person has 18 items that link to inactive OKR because the priority changed. Imagine you have 1,000 people. How many of them? What would be the things you could free up to help the customer success manager earlier to free up resources for the things that hasn't moved forward for him? So this is example to see how things connect when you have your work tools and then finally interconnected it to your source of truth data and your system of records, you can see the interconnection. So this is where what we are going to cover a little bit more in details on what that means when you choose the correct operating system for your business context, that not only for agents, also for humans. You saw this often, people say that often, context and a graph, and what does it all mean? How they related together. So we want to put together some context that made more popular by Palantir, obviously came out also from founders of PayPal, where Ontology is being deployed across a much wider industry. And the idea we want to call out here about product organization has an ontology. And in a larger extent, this is well understood, especially for modern product organization, the goals, the metrics, the customers, the product itself, and the capabilities and so on. So they're all there, dependencies and allocation resource, all that stuff are related to product operating ontology. Now, ontology is not just the data. It's not just the linkage of the data or AKA graph. It also means the rules and actions. What does it mean as strategic drift? What do you mean by ripple effect? What do you mean by dependencies that not just blocking one blocking, it's not A blocks B, right? That could be resource dependencies, competing for resources, teams, and all of that. So these are represented in the product operating ontology. Why you need ontology for your agents to work? Going back again, agents are like your digital partners, right? It's your partner for individuals and for teams. So they operate in the digital version of your real world of operating. And the ontology is designed and reflect, it's a digital version of your actual reality of how you operate. That's why you need ontology, so agent can work the same way you want them to work and not going rogue to do things. The second part of the it's part of the ontology, but maintain it is about the semantics. Now, again, garbage in, garbage out. When we have the definition of a customer, for example, in different system could mean different things. When we talk about goals in different system could be different things. And sometimes even in the same tool, if you guys use some decentralized tool, regardless of Jira or others, they have goals everywhere. So the goals could mean anything. Which goals you're referring to? What are the allocations? What are dependencies? So you have to unify your semantics. So the goals is the goals, and that cannot be just a reporting layer. It has to be operational. So if I want to know trade-off, I have to know that is the actual goal we're talking about, that customer 99 in system 1 is the customer A in system 2. So that unified semantics is critical for your agents from different functions and teams to work together. And then obviously the context graph is not just the data, it's the relations of the data and what triggers what. So then when you make decisions, you know the downstream impact, what was decided in the past and why. And then we talk about runtime intelligence a little bit here. Product managers and product operations engineering teams, all of you are both making decisions, making trade-offs, as well as work. So during any of the process, you need to have information, understand the insights, writing PRDs, what are the trade-offs. So those are the agents, and then building logic and the business rules that are deterministic of your ontology being applied at the time decisions are made and alert to you. So I showed you earlier about this drift and the data errors. Those are the runtime intelligence that ambient agents are running based on your business rules and surface that to you. So you know either you need to make changes or make adjustments or make trade-offs and work with your human partner as well as agents. So last but not least is read and write. A lot of AI tools today we have, it is that you can get data, you can get reports, you can get linkages, but there's not actionable. But every action you make, regardless, I move this feature from Q1 to Q2, as we saw in this graph earlier, that if we move something from Q1 to Q2, and you can see all the customers and impact this could be happening, right? The data and they are supporting this strategic bets. Those are the read and the write needs to come into play. Otherwise, if we just have a read, it would not, the changes are instantly invalidate all your read. So that being able to both read and write to your operating model in the ontology way, so that ripple effect would almost near time trickle down and cascade across your product operating model. And for you to do that, obviously, what we need is the governance and traceability. Now, these are all interconnected. If you don't have ontology, how do you put a governance? Who has access to which object? at which level, what kind of access, the ontology needs to be in place so that you have a governance and vice versa. And you cannot do read and write if you cannot trace. If I cannot trace, I don't have a confident understanding of this data is accurate or not. But if for me to trace it, I have to have the graph of the data that has the semantics say the same thing that reflect my ontology. So we kind of went through quite a bit behind the scenes, but this is really important because for us, especially in today's world, there are a lot of on the surface level, we heard a lot, right? This is just going to work. You have an agent can do all these wonderful things. So we can build these agents, build these tools. But when you spend 20% of time building 60% of the tooling, the remaining 40% of the time, the remaining 40% of the capability is what really is production ready and useful versus more like a prototype, right? So this is where I really want to kind of wrap up the session, sort of the prepare the session topic, and want to open up to questions and comments. And if you have more questions, want to learn a little bit more about the Dragonboat and the ontology, want to know a little bit more how these pieces are coming together, here's additional resource and information for you as well, going back sort of the structure, right? Think about the data model, the relations, the rules, the axions, those are connected into your digital reality of your operating model. And when you have that, and by the way, when you run it in the agentic world, you may not just read what is happening right now and then make it into your operating model, right? Because chances are your current ones not the ones you want it to be, but you may not want to be there like in the perfect world. So you probably want to have your ontology slightly better than when you are and good enough for your agents to work and then evolve from there. And that's really what we've seen most of the companies that are making most of the progress and getting really the benefit from this agentic capabilities that we have today is having a progressive view on your digital twin of your operating model, aka ontology, and having something that's flexible and elastic enough so that evolve over time. That's it for our prepared session. Any questions and comments and others? Awesome. Great. Thank you. Any questions and comments, feel free to ping us and reach out to me. And, this is evolving space, and we definitely really enjoy talking to our customers and talking to practitioners, see what's working and what's not working. And if you have comments and questions to share with us as well. And here is, at dragonboat.io, look me up on LinkedIn, Becky Flint. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Becky, and thank you everybody for joining. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day and great evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.